Okay, so we're starting, and once again, welcome to our monthly meeting. So then we'll do our presentation, and then we'll have our business meeting. Hopefully, then we'll hear from our new members, and I hope you guys will introduce yourselves and let us know your research areas. We'll have announcements, and that's a time for any of you to let us know what's going on, or if it's something you want to share with the membership, and then we will adjourn. Okay, so we're just going to go right into the presentation, and it's entitled Planning Your Research Trip in 2023. And this presentation is being provided by myself. I'm Clevlyn Anderson. I'm the corresponding secretary for the chapter. We'll have William Durant and Dawnya Lindsay present also. So here's what we're going to talk about. Why research on site, especially when there's so much information online. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about pre-planning your research, thinking about your research question, thinking about research resources. What do you think you're going to find? Planning your logistics, looking at transportation and lodging, and then what to bring. Then what we're going to do is what I'll do is give an overview of all of those items, just so that you can start thinking about what it is that you need when you're going out on site. And then each one of us, myself, William, and Dawnya, will give you an idea of what we might have incurred on a research trip. I'm going to take you on my trip to Mississippi. William will cover South Carolina, and Dawnya will talk about Georgia. And then we'll leave some time for questions and answers. So why research on site? Well, there's so much information out on the internet, but then there's a lot of information that hasn't been digitized just yet. So you might find that there are records online where you might have to go on site, let's say to the archives. You may have to go to the county level, and you may want to research at cemeteries. And then, of course, there are those oral interviews that you might not be able to. Okay, my camera went off. There's those oral interviews that you're going to want to do in person. You might be able to do some by phone, but it's really helpful if you can go in person and meet with folks and then have follow-up questions by phone later on. You just may want to go visit the place where your ancestors came from. And when you do that, you want to plan to take a lot of pictures just for those memories. So you're pre-planning research. What do you want to do before you go? So first of all, you want to ask yourself, what is your research question? What information are you looking for? And where are you researching? You want to make sure you start collecting maps at the state level, the local level, looking at the surrounding counties for the place that you're going to go research. You'll find that all of this is going to be very helpful. And some things you want to think about, are you researching in the correct county? And that's where your maps come in. You want to look at the history of that county. Do you know when it was formed? Because that's going to make a difference. Was it carved out from another county, or were there a couple of counties that were combined? You want to seek out family members and collaborators. This is going to be your fan club, your family associates and neighbors, family friends. You don't want to leave anybody out. And there are those DNA connections. If you're into that, if you find there are people researching the same area, you can collaborate on information. Maybe they've been there before and they can give you information about what you should be looking for. And you want to look for others who are researching the same family. So these are going to be your ancestry connections. I have found people on Ancestry that are a part of my family, and but they're providing me information that I didn't know. And I'm going to ask, if you're not speaking, can you mute yourself? Because we're getting some background. And communication, you want to communicate with your archivists, your librarians, courthouse staff, and your local genealogists. It's a good thing to get in contact with these people before you go, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we get into our examples. Some other planning, logistics, your timeline. This is personal. How much time do you need, or versus how long can you stay? So you would really want to lay out those days and look at how much time you think you're going to spend at the different venues or resources, such as your libraries and universities, your travel time, all of that you want to schedule out. You need to check the hours of the places where you're going to research, because you never know, those days and times can change in a minute. You don't want to show up somewhere and find out they're closed early for the day, or they're only open on certain days. Check holidays and check any upcoming events that might affect the operating hours, because you have some counties where they may be having a big festival or just some other event where everybody's going to be at that activity, and you're not going to be able to access the place where you thought you'd be able to research. Check to see if you make an appointment, because not all of these resources are open 8 hours a day or 7 days a week. So you want to call ahead and verify that information. You want to verify, do they have the records that you're looking for? Just what is it that they have that might be helpful for you? You can check the internet for information, but then follow up with a call just to be sure, because as you know, a lot of places don't keep their web pages up to date. And what do you need to bring? Of course, paper, notebooks, pens, pencils, highlighters, markers, magnifying glass, because you never know if you'll have a document where you can barely see the print. And you want to bring a machete if you're going to do some cemetery visits. Maybe you can borrow one on site, because I know you can't carry one of those if you're flying in. Of course, you'll have your laptop, but eventually you'll know whether you can take your laptop into a place or not, but that's okay. That's still something you're going to want to have, because you never know if you have to go back and look through your documents, just as a reference. If you can, bring a handheld scanner. I use an app that I download to my phone, and that seems to work pretty good. They don't make the best copies, but it's pretty easy to use. I can scan a full document with that app. And but if you have the handheld, which I don't have, I think I do need to buy one. Then that way you can scan across that whole page, especially in those courthouse records where those books are huge. You want to be able to scan that whole page and get a good view. Make sure you're capturing all of the data, because nothing's worse than to scan a document and then you get home and you see part of it is cut off. You'll want to check the policy on scanning and taking pictures, because some places say you can take pictures, you can't scan, or maybe you can only make copies. So you want to be prepared for that. It may sound old-fashioned, but it might be good to print out directions before you go into a town, and especially to look at the map to see how it's laid out. And I'll give you some examples of that when I show you what I went through on my trip. A digital recorder is nice. I personally have not used one, because generally I get into conversations with people, and then if they start talking about historical information, then I ask, is it okay for me to take notes? And I usually have a notebook for that. But if you're doing a formal interview, then definitely you want to have a digital recorder for those instances. And then storage, as you're capturing all this information, pictures and documents, you want to have a storage option. I upload to Dropbox, and there are others. Some people use OneDrive, Google Drive, or Evernote. Transportation, how are you going to get there? And where will you stay? And then how will you get around? So now you've got to think about travel. Do you fly versus drive? A lot of these places don't have, you can't call an Uber or a taxi. You're going to fly in. Do you have to rent a car? Thinking about that place, you got to do a little bit of research to find out just what type of transportation are you going to need once you get there. For instance, if you're going to Jackson, Mississippi to the archives, you don't necessarily have to have a car for that if you're going to spend all your time at the archives, because you can spend a good 3 or more days right at the archives. There's a hotel generally right there in the area, restaurants. So that would be a trip where you may not necessarily need a car. But if you're going to a small county, you got to look at hotel, where you're going to stay, your food resources, and then you want to have change for copies and tolls. Okay, and then wrapping up, and this is not me wrapping up, this is you wrapping up your resources. Uh, Try not to analyze all of your documents on site. What you want to do is collect, and then maybe review what you have that evening, or you can wait until you get back home, because you really don't want to spend all your time trying to review everything right there, because believe me, you're going to need that extra time as you're digging into the records. Let's say if you're in a courthouse or the archives, you want to spend more of that time just pulling as much information as you can. For me, and then later I transfer all of my information to Family Tree Maker, and I try to do that immediately once I get back home. I don't even do that while I'm on the trip. And then from there, depending on the information that you gather, then you can decide if you want to plan a follow-up trip. Okay, so here is I'm calling this Clevlyn's Mississippi research. So the first thing that I have to think about is, what is my question, or what is my goal? I'm trying to research ancestors beyond my grandparents, and even in some cases beyond my great-grandparents. Most of this information I had and had gotten from, excuse me, from my family, and this was from oral history. So my parents had given me a lot of that basic information to start with. And then I started recording all of that family information into Family Tree Maker. And this is just a look at the interface for that. I can build my tree, and it has a place for me to pull in census records. And there's a place for notes, so I can do personal notes or factual notes, and then a task list, which is over here. So if there's something that I'm thinking about, it's like, oh, I need a death certificate for this person, then I would put that here. And then I can actually print out a list of everything that I need. So if I put in death certificate, when I get ready to go, when I do my research trip, I already know, I have a little bit of an idea of the people that I need to search for. And all of this information in pulling this tree together after getting the oral history was to pull in census records from Ancestry and then Family Search. So my location, where I mainly research, it's not the only place, but my main location is Macon, Noxubee County, Mississippi. It's about 5 hours from where I live, which is in Norcross, Georgia. And so when I get there, here's the area where I'm going. This is Macon in Noxubee. And as you can see, it sits 7 miles from the border of Alabama. So that's something that I have to think about. I'm not only going to research here, but I have to research these surrounding counties and maybe go over into Alabama, which is what I have done. If I want to go to the archives, I know that it's 2 hours away. So I would factor that into a research trip in terms of scheduling and time. So this is 2 hours over to Jackson, Mississippi. Now here's a look at the surrounding counties of Noxubee. So here's Pickens, Lowndes. Some of you know this as Columbus, Mississippi, and Octavia. And there's Kemper. I know from the history that a lot of people migrated out of Kemper up into Noxubee. So again, that's knowing your history and where people came from and where did they go in and out of Noxubee. And here's an even deeper dive of a map. This one tells me the townships for Noxubee, and that relates back to the census records. So if it says a person lived in township 16, then I have a pretty good idea of where they lived based on this map. And of course, I couldn't help myself. I had to write in or pencil in where those ancestors lived based on the census record. So that's real helpful. It gives you a visual of just where your folks lived, and then you can start seeing this pattern of intermarriages and how people moved around over time. So when we talk about transportation, here's what you might be faced with going into a county or a town that you're not real familiar with. I'm familiar with this town because I have visited here off and on over the years. But this is Macon, Mississippi, and this is on a Sunday. So that's what that town looks like. So there is no Uber and there are no cabs to be found. It's a little busier during the weekday. But you're going to need a car to get around. This is going out into the country. I have family that still lives out in the country area, and this is really only 15 minutes away from downtown. But people do still farm, or some people still live in the area where they used to farm. You also might find yourself going out this way to visit cemeteries. So you need your GPS and your map, and GPS is pretty good nowadays. It will tell you where you are. But I always like to do a visual just to see where I'm going, because sometimes you get on these dirt roads and it seems like they last forever. And for me, it gets a little scary if I don't know where I'm going. You want to know the history of that county, and I'll tell you why this is helpful. You want to know when the county was formed, who were the first settlers, where did they migrate from, and so where do you find this information? You can get this from a local library, university libraries, or look online. Look at Google Books, WorldCat. Just find out as much as you can about the history of that county. This helps you to determine, especially when you start figuring out who the enslaver was of your family, because you can see when did they come into that county. And I've been able to match up family with those first settlers. So Noxubee came into being around 1834. It talks about some of those first settlers, and so I can see with a family member, they say they came from Georgia. Now I see the enslaver came from Georgia, and about the time that they came into the county. So it can be very, very helpful. So know the history of the area where you're researching. You want to know where your records are, county versus state records. Sometimes it's not as easy to see it online. Sometimes it takes that visit just to see what you're going to get where. I just know that in this courthouse, they have the original Macon Beacon newspapers, marriage certificates, education records, and deed records. A lot of this is online, but there have been times when I couldn't find a record digitally, but when I got to the courthouse and was able to lay that book out and to really peruse it slowly, then I was able to find information that I couldn't find online. So over here, this is the Jackson Archives, and there have been times I've called them for information, and they will tell me if those records can be found at the courthouse versus at the archives. The Mississippi Archives does a great job. If you ever go out on their site, mdah.org, they tell you what's online that's digital versus what you have to request to see in person. And that's mostly going to be your family genealogies and your personal papers. And then they also have courthouse records. So you can search for that online. And then once you get to the archives, then you're in a reading room where they bring the records out to you. These are records that you can't take out. You can copy them, but they're not available to take away from the archives. So just kind of know the difference between that. Or death certificates. I can, if I know, have a pretty good idea of the death certificates that I want to print, I can print those out here for 50 cents each, which is a bargain compared to what you would have to pay if you're sending off for it to Vital Records. So they have these death certificates from 1913 up to 1944. And you can find those death certificates, the certificate number get that from an index, which is provided by Ancestry and Family Search. And there was a time when that wasn't available, but that's available now. This is what that courthouse looks like. And can you imagine that very first time I went into this courthouse, I had no idea what I was looking at. And the ladies in the office, they're sweet as I don't know what, but they tell you, you ask them, you tell them you're looking for genealogy records and they want to know, well, what are you looking for? So you have to have a pretty good idea of what's in here and what it is that you're looking for. So now I know that I can find deed records, wills and estates, the actual original newspapers are there, marriage certificates, and the educational records. Here's the Noxubee County Library. They have an actual genealogy section that has family histories. People in the community actually do their genealogies, and they house them here. So you have those. The historical bulletins, which are the originals, but we actually have those online now. Sometimes people will inventory their family cemeteries and house them here. So you just never know what you're going to find at a local library. And as you can see, this used to be a jail. But they converted it to a library. So that's kind of interesting. Cemeteries, this is definitely a gem. You want to find or know where those cemeteries are, where your family might have been buried, and hope that you're not late. This is a really well kept cemetery at Spring Hill Baptist Church out on 388. In an area called Big B Valley. So when I go to a cemetery like this, I am going in to inventory the whole cemetery. I'm looking for my relatives, but I'll inventory the whole cemetery. This is the city cemetery. This is Oddfellows, and you can see it's very well maintained, and a lot of residents, white African American, are now burying their families here because the church cemeteries and on the ones on private land are not being maintained. So they're coming out here now. And as you can see, these are old estates. These were family plots, but really well kept. And they even have an online feature where you can determine where a person is or a family is buried out here. So that's a plus because it's pretty big. That's a pretty big cemetery. Now, here's an example of what happens to your family, your cemeteries that are on someone's land. I kept seeing McLeod Cemetery on some death certificates, and I wanted to go to that cemetery. I was told it was on 14. Macon sits over here, so this is about 7 miles out. And I kept going up and down this road, and then eventually GPS came into play, and it said, "Well, you're right. You're here. You've arrived." But I couldn't see anything, and plus, this map told me that it was right here. As you can see, it says McLeod Cemetery. So anyway, I asked around and I finally found a person who knows where all the cemeteries are. And he said, it's right there. There's a gate. He said, but you can't go up in there in the summertime because it overgrows and there are snakes out there. And he just kept saying snakes with a lot of gusto until I knew that I couldn't make that trip until the right time. So I went out there. It was in the winter season. He said January or February, and that's what I did. This was in February. This was before COVID. And I had to go out on that land, but I had to figure out whose land it was because I wanted to let them know I was going to, go out to the cemetery. And you can see they have a pathway here because in Mississippi, you are supposed to allow people to come and visit the cemeteries, family plots. And so that I eventually found out who owned the land. He was very gracious at any time. And so I went in February and I had my boots and my machete and I brought a friend with me because there was no way I was going back up in there by myself. So you can see the condition of the cemetery. This is what happens if you don't get to them right away. Most of the graves, the big ones, have toppled over. I found one grave of a family member, and that was it. All of those uh, headstones or graves that were supposed to be there, they're no longer there. So something to keep in mind. But if you're going to look for cemeteries, you might want to hurry up and do that because a lot of times in these small towns, they're not being kept up. You want to seek out your family and fan club, go to a church service or program if you know that's going to be happening. A great place to go. Just know how you fit into the family because once you start talking to people, they're going to tell you who the family genealogist is. Same thing for family reunions. So that's something that I make sure that I try to take advantage of. Historical society meetings, and you have to know how they operate. This is one that has quarterly meetings. And the very first time I went, I didn't quite know if these people were friendly or not, but they are. They're just like us. They're historians, they're genealogies, and they're always ready to help you to solve your research question. Some historical societies, like for instance, this one over here, this is over in Gordo, Alabama. It's just like 2 or 3 ladies that come to this office a couple of days a week. You really have to make an appointment because you need to know when they're going to be in the office. This isn't a full-time job for them. They're there as retirees. This is something that they like to do. And so, but they're full of information. So check out where that historical society is for your particular county and find out when they are available. Now, I may be over with my time, so I'm not going to go through all of this. What I wanted to do was to show how I mapped out a 1-week schedule, beginning with a Wednesday, arriving in Noxubee, and the days that I would go to the courthouse and what I wanted to review. The day that I would go to the library, and that would have to be a Thursday because I know they're not open on Wednesdays or weekends, and when I would spend time at the courthouse. This is including a trip to Jackson, what I want to review, coming back, doing a little bit more research that morning, and maybe spending time at the 2 Mississippi museums, which is right next door. So that just kind of, this is how you would lay that out. And so I won't go into all the detail of that. But of course, we're recording this. So if you want to go back and look at it, just as an idea of how you might schedule your trip, that would be available. And some missed opportunities. I mentioned this earlier. When I first started visiting cemeteries, I would only take pictures of those graves of people that I knew or if there was a familiar name. But a lot of times I would have to go back. So it turns out it's best to just go ahead and inventory as much of that cemetery as you can. Because what you'll find out is most people in that cemetery are most likely related, and you're going to need that information later on. Not reviewing archival finding aids. This was one that was sent to me from the Alabama archives in Montgomery, and they sent that to me and said, tell us what you're going to want to see. And I got it. I looked at it. I said, well, in my mind, I said, I'll look at all of it. And I got there and I told them that, and they didn't even laugh. They didn't think it was funny because really there was so much material in here. But I had to learn that you do look at those finding aids, and they'll give you a pretty good idea of what it is you want to focus, because when you get there, they're going to bring you out a box at a time. And then when you're finished, they take that box back. So you got to know how they operate. And also, in the beginning, there was a little bit of reluctance to approach and ask questions. And maybe a little bit of shyness. Maybe I just didn't want to be intrusive, but now I have no shame and I just try to ask as many questions, as I can. And I have found that for the most part, and especially with your older relatives, they're very anxious to share information with you. So that is my trip. And we'll leave questions for the end of all the presentations. So next we'll have William. He's going to share his trip to South Carolina. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, let's see. It's my first time doing a PowerPoint presentation. I'll bring it up. I see the open share tray, is that a little arrow, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, 1 minute. Click that. And I think, you see that? My road trips from Atlanta to South Carolina?
Yeah, it's there.
We go to slideshow and from beginning.
Right.
Okay. Do you see
Okay,
that?
I see it. I see it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. For those of us who might be across the country tuning in, I live in the Atlanta metro area, but my main research state is South Carolina. And this composite map shows all the towns I've gone to thus far. You notice Charleston is not there because I haven't gone to it, and for reasons you will find out. Number one, I don't have any relatives there. And number two, my research hadn't taken me there yet. I know I need to go there. So in order to go to South Carolina, I had to jump on I-20, and I-20 goes through Augusta, Columbia. It passes Sumter, Bishopville, which is where my mother was born. Go to Florence, it goes to I-20 ends in Florence, and it intersects with I-95, which goes north and south. Marion is about 20 miles from Florence. It's where my father was born and I was born. Orangeburg is where my mother's father was born. And these arrows go like this because of reasons I will explain. Here's an interstate map to show you give you a better idea of what's what in South Carolina. You see I-20 and Augusta, Columbia, Bishopville, Sumter, Florence, Marion, and Orangeburg. I-95, I-20 ends in Florence, but I like to say it starts there. All of these trips were ones of actually chance and opportunity. My driving force to do road trips was my self-imposed routine to check once a month on my elderly mother, who still lived in Florence. And my father died, and I used to go see him when he was sick, so I kept that up after he died just to, check on things. The time crunches he listed here disciplined me to plan side trips and do some researching I would not have done otherwise. I would go back and forth, visit her, and then doing research, I started thinking about on-site research, and I said, I'm passing all these towns. I know about them. I knew about, I grew up in Florence, and I knew all about Marion, I knew all about Orangeburg and Bishopville, but I never looked at them from a genealogy standpoint. So these are some of the constraints I had. My mother was caring for 2 aunts, one at a time, and she served dinner at 5:30. That's when they ate, so I had to be home by that time if I was going to eat. Also, it's a 4.5 hour driving time one way to Florence, so that cut down on my time, forced me to think very critically and specifically about what to do. And I had a lot of time for research and there and back to Atlanta. Uh, I had done a lot of research in the same places that Clevlyn mentioned, family stories. Somebody was in asylum, somebody started a church. I read a lot of books, looking for names, looking for everything else. Family search, ancestry, you see, and also a lot of newspaper websites, chronicling America, Genealogy Bank, newspapers.com, and newspaperarchives.com. But the one tool I really love is Google and the street views, because street views are great. You can walk down the street virtually or drive and see where you're going, look around, see where the parking spots are, see what's around. And so when you get there, you won't be totally at a loss. Of course, Google, that little car that goes around and takes a picture, they go around every few years. And when I Googled my house the other day, I noticed there were different cars in the house next to me, and the time was January 2021, which was newer. So Google Street Views are a great thing to use in addition to GPS. Here are the questions I wanted to know. These are based on family stories. There's a Durant Cemetery, my grandparents' house. What does it look like? The church in Orangeburg, some land in Bishopville. Uh, my grandfather was in the state asylum for a while, and anyway, these are some of the things I wanted to find to see if they really existed and see if the stories were true. The first, I will talk about 3 road trips: Marion, Orangeburg, and Columbia. And I picked Marion first because I knew it best. I was born there. It's only 20 miles from Florence, but it might as well have been in Thailand or Russia, because I hardly ever went there. We didn't have any family there. I knew about it. We left there when I was a toddler. And so I decided to go and look at the Durant Cemetery to find some graves. And what I would do, I would go I-20 to Columbia, past Bishopville and Sumter to Florence, get on a 2-lane road from Florence and go to Marion and not stop and see my mother. What I would do is I would arrive there about 12 o'clock and use a whole afternoon to do the research, and then double back to Florence to be back in time for dinner. Just a second, trying to get my, oops, sorry about that. And I found it. I knew where it was. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid, my grandmother visited from, she moved up to Ohio. She came back and she wanted to clean off the graves. So we went to the graveyard. It was all overgrown in a thicket, and that's all I remember. As a matter of fact, the youngest daughter of the actual plantation owner still lived there. She's very old, and we had to stop by her house to let her know we were going behind, because it was behind her house. And so this map on the left shows Marion as I got there. The vertical line at the top left shows me coming from the main road down South Main Street, and I took a left on the horizontal line, and at the end of Collins Street is the Durant Cemetery where you see the arrow. On the right is a Google Street View of that area. On the left is the Durant Cemetery with a sign, and on the right is a water treatment plant, which tells you that cemetery is in a low area. And as a matter of fact, right behind the cemetery, there's a swampy area. And I always say, I bet you there's some graves back there from ages ago that have disappeared. And all of that land on the bottom part of this horizontal line was a Durant plantation, according to some deeds I found, and some land on the top half of that, above that horizontal line, where was the Durant plantation. The Marion High School was built. That's the integrate one. After integration, they moved the old one and to here, and that whole area, their football field was all that plantation. This is a cemetery as I found it in 2012 when I started going there looking around. And this all black cemetery. And the picture at the lower left is the only picture I found of with a Durant name in it. It's my grand aunt, my grandfather's sister. And she married a guy named Taylor, who was only cut hair for white people, this back in the day. And so since I couldn't find anybody else, I knew they were there, but the markers had disappeared or gone. I decided to document everything, every grave in the graveyard, because I said other people can't get here like I can. So I'm a do it and put it in, publish it. So what I did is I over the course of 4 months, 4 trips to Florence, I would go straight to the cemetery with a yellow legal pad, a little camera, and I would diagram where the graves are with all the trees and the bushes and everything else. And I would describe each grave, because some of them are upright, some of them are metal, some of them are in the ground. You have to be standing over to see them. And I published that in the local newsletter of the society. PD is the name of the area. It's named after the Native Americans who used to be there until things had changed. And so they ran it. And I also put it on Find a Grave. Find a Grave doesn't care. It's not, if you want to put something on Find a Grave, all you have to do is sign in, and you don't have to check with anybody. You just do it. And so what I did is I photographed each grave and posted each one on Find a Grave. So if you want to look at the Durant Cemetery, just Google, go to the Find a Grave, look up Durant Cemetery, and look up Marion County, South Carolina. This is a sample of what you find there. This is actually my grand aunt that I was talking about. Her name was Martha Durant Taylor. And down below is the inscription, which I wrote down, and the description of the actual grave, just in case somebody, if this appeared in a publication, you can't see the actual marker. So the description of the actual grave of the marker will give you an idea what to look for when you go there. I also submitted it to the AAHGS News back in 2012, the year I started this. And the editor back then decided to put it in the journal, which I was shocked and surprised and pleased. And this is the opening page of a multi-page story in volume 30 of that journal. Oops, wait a minute. Another place I want to find is my grandparents' house. It no longer exists, but the map on the left shows me going north on Main Street. Instead of taking a right down there on Liberty Street at the bottom and going to the cemetery, I took a left, and that's towards town. And you see, I had to take another left to get to 106 Bond Street. I knew that address from my mother. She was my griot. And also from what I saw actually in the actual census of 1920, 30, and 1910s. And the pictures on the right is where our house used to be. It's torn down now. And a big Baptist church in town now owns the land. But that little empty grassy area, excuse me, is where where the house was. This is I found the archives, and this is a picture of the street view. I was talking about. See, if you ever use street view, those arrows down at your bottom, you click on one, it'll go take you in that direction. You can turn to go to right and left, and you can go up and down the street. And on the corner is a Marian Archives. It looks like a church. And I found out you have to call because the guy there, his last name is Godbold, the same name as that street. He's in that family. He's an archivist, real nice guy, but he's only there a few days a week and a certain time, so you have to call and let him know you're coming. The building on the right is the courthouse, Marion County Courthouse, and the building behind the archives of block building is a deed office. And that's where I went to and found the deed where the Black church bought the Durant Cemetery land from the Durant plantation owner's daughters back in 1901. My second trip I'm talking about is going to Orangeburg. that requires some different types of planning because Orangeburg is a long ways away from Florence. And I had to make sure that I was going back to Atlanta because all these trips will put me back late at night. And I didn't mind that, but you don't want to be traveling all the time. But anyway, so what I would do, I decided to go there after, on the last day when I left, going back to Atlanta. I would leave home early in the morning after my mother made breakfast and jump on 95, which is right there at 20, and go down to a surface road, and which is, I think it's 301 or something, and go to Orangeburg. It's about 20 or 30 miles. And I was actually also going to a place called Cordova, which is a hamlet just outside of Orangeburg. And going to Google Earth, or using Google, my mother had told me that she knew that her great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather had started a church. It was in Orangeburg somewhere, and that's all she knew. And so I went on Google Earth. Actually, I looked in some books on another subject, and I saw him mentioned in there. They mentioned the name of his church, which is Calvary. And so I went to Google Earth, went to Orangeburg, looked around in the country, and I saw Calvary Church popped up on the map. And I zoomed in, and that's the church in circle. And the railroad track crosses the road. And when I saw that, I said, this has to be it, because my mother said, her father said, when he lived in Orangeburg, they lived on a farm, and he would walk along the railroad track to get to Orangeburg to go to school because he did not want to be a farmer. He wanted to be something else. He ended up being a brick mason. That's the church at the right. Obviously, that's not the original church, but they added on, remodeled, and it's abandoned now because the congregation left and went somewhere else, and it's just standing there now, empty. I found a grave. Sorry about that. Somebody's at the door. I found a grave of a site of my great-great-grandfather, and he was it's in the left picture at the bottom, and it's falling on the ground. And that's where I left it. You don't, when you go to graveyards, you don't move anything around. You just capture it as it is. And on the right is my determined theory of where things are. According to the census, I knew his sister was named Anna, and she had married a Richardson. She happens to be buried right next to Robert Danley, my great-great-grandfather. And then there's a big empty space. And my guess is that since Reverend William Danley, the person I'm eventually named after, founded the church, he probably had a spot right up near the church when he died. I also went to the Orangeburg courthouse, and that's it. And it's interesting, you walk in, the guard lets you in, you go in the deed room, and there's all these books and nobody in there except I think real estate people, because based on their conversation, they were doing research so they can close on a house and make sure that the house actually belonged to people who were selling it. And one thing I found out was my grandfather had property deeds. I saw him in the agricultural schedule in 1870, 71, something like that, and I saw he had land. So I went and found the deed. I looked in the index book and found the deed. That's it on the right. And here is the transcription I did of it. The circle, the red circles are how the different where his name is, and as you can see, they're spelled differently, even on this one. And there's about 4 or 5 different other spellings I found in other documents. And the John McMichael, the person in the green box, is the name of one of the his former enslaver. The McMichaels, I found out doing research, were the in-laws of the Danleys. And I found out that William Danley, during slavery, he was on the Danley family plantation, and his wife and some of his children were on the McMichael plantation. So he ended up buying some land. There was a dispute between the McMichael estate and somebody else, and the clerk of the court was authorized to be the receiver and dispose of it. And so here he bought it. You can see he bought it for $780, payable in 3 installments over 3 years at $390. My third and last road trip I'm talking about is to Colombia. And that was a no-brainer because I had to pass through it. If I didn't go back through Orangeburg, I had to go through Columbia. So I could arrange time going there or coming back. And the first time I went there to this archives, that's the South Carolina Department of Archives and History, I just went in just to look around, and I started browsing, and I thought I'd been here an hour. And I looked up, and it was about 3 hours later, and it was time to go. They were about to close. And it's like the Tavares, winter comes to spring and you haven't accomplished a thing. I've been there 3 hours and I hadn't done anything. So I learned to have my ducks in a row and my questions ready the next time I went there. And I went there looking for my grandfather's asylum records. He was put in asylum for, this says, religious enthusiasm. He was a preacher. We did not know that. And from what I found in other documents or newspapers, he was a very passionate, committed preacher. He would get very happy. His parishioners would get happy. And something happened. And he lived in Sumter. And the judge said, committed him to the insane asylum for examination. And here's his personal medical history. And this is where they say he's a preacher. And this is where he says religious enthusiasm. They call it recurrent mania. And over to the top right, it says that he says he is directed by the Holy Ghost to do whatever he does, and that he is not responsible for his actions. And so there's another long story regarding that, but that's another time and place. Here's some, I'm near the end of my presentation, but I wanted to share you some places that I looked at in other towns, and you can apply this in any state. Look in courthouses, look in the libraries, look in deed offices, museums, libraries, every place. And of course you have to do it more than one occasion. Here's some photographs of some repositories in South Carolina. On the left is Columbia, the South Carolina Archives. I showed you that. At the bottom left is the South Caroliniana Library. That's the name of it. It's at the University of South Carolina, and it has a lot of plantation records. I think Dr. Lisa Bratton, who's a member, said her records, she found some records of the Bratton, White Bratton family there. And I found some WPA records there. They're on microfilm of the churches that I showed, of which I've been a member in South Carolina. And they were from 1930s. And so it's interesting to look at that. Over to the right is Charleston, the International African American Museum, which will open later this year. The Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture. Avery was a school for blacks back in during the segregation from late 1800s until I think about the 50s or 60s. At the bottom right is the Historical Society Reading Room. It's at the College of Charleston. And they have a website, but the website doesn't tell you too much. It only gives you a sample. So that's a place where you have to go and spend some time looking around and seeing what you can find. The last thing I want to call your attention to is on our website, on the members only page, under the special interest groups, the SIGs. Um, Under the South Carolina SIG, I created this years ago. Started when I realized there were a lot of places that I wanted to refer to again and again. So I provided the links, and it's 10 pages right now. And if you can go there and click on it and see what's where, and it gives you advice, and I hope you find it helpful. And that's the end of my presentation. I hope you found something of value and understood what I said. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, Dawnya.
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
Okay. I am at a conference, so you may hear something in the background, but let me share. Let me bring up my screen here. Okay. You seeing everything?
Yes.
Do you see it?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was muted.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to talk about is if you are planning a trip to Georgia to do some genealogy research, I found that as I was growing up, we thought all of our family came from Springfield, Ohio, because that's all we knew. But as I got into the genealogy and started researching my maternal grandparents, I found out that my grandfather was actually born in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I used to wonder how he got to Chattanooga, Tennessee, because then I found out that he was actually from Athens, Georgia. And if you look at a map, which I advise everybody to do in any of your genealogy research, is to look at a map to understand just how people are in relation to their places. And I discovered that Chattanooga is right across the Georgia border. So um, that's how my grandfather got from um, Athens to Chattanooga, and then his family migrated to Springfield, Ohio. So if you're coming to Georgia to do some research on your family, we want to talk about what it is that you want to know. And that has been mentioned previously, is that you find out what it is that you want to find out. Discover what it is, and then you can discover where to find that information, who to ask, the things to take to do your research, and what there is to do in your research. Now, know which county in Georgia the people come from. There are, I want to say, 159 counties in Georgia. You see this map here that lists all of the counties. And the area that I discovered I needed to look in was for Clark County. And let's see, that is north of Gwinnett, which is where I live. But Clark County is where Athens is. So that's where I focused my research, was on Clark County. Discover what county it is. Each county is different. They handle records differently, and you want to be sure to know how they handled vital statistics, how they handle records, when did they actually send them to the state? Um, is it a burned county? Are the records still there in the county and also in the state? But knowing the county is very crucial for doing your research in Georgia. The other thing that I discovered is that Georgia had been known as being in Georgia militia districts. And you'll see this on the census or even other state records, state um, certificates. You'll see GMD or Georgia militia. And that's how the state was organized. It was organized in militia districts. Now, the districts were named for the the captain in charge of that district, of that militia district. And starting in 1804, they were designated a number of the district. And you need to know which one because they had over 1,600 militia districts in Georgia. And you could be looking forever if you don't know, if you can't narrow down to what district your family came from. Now, the district may have been named for family or another little town in that area. So discover that, find that out. Now, this is the militia districts for Clark County, which is where my family comes from. And you'll see here, there, Bogart, and the, these are the numbers. So, and then, excuse me, Athens is right in the middle there. So that's where, sorry, excuse me, get some water here. Okay, thank you. So know which number your militia district is for your family, because that's how the records were kept. Now, you can also suggest that you go visit the Georgia State Archives, and you can visit them on online at georgiaarchives.org. They have so many documents online that you can research, and that will help you narrow down what it is that you're looking for. They have like birth certificates, death certificates. I have been looking for my great grandfather's death certificate, and I found it there at the Georgia Archives. It's also a great place once you have visited online. It's a great place to spend a day or two or three, and you can get printed maps very inexpensively. So you can get maps of the area that your relatives are from. They also have loose records that you can review and search through. I do suggest that you call and make an appointment, or at least schedule, find out what is the best time to go do what it is that you want to research. They also have virtual classes and virtual seminars that can help you in your search. One of the classes that we did for the Georgia Special Interest Group is that we reviewed land titles, and a whole lot of information there to understand how property was handled, and that includes people property. Um, so, one thing I've had to learn to do is not get angry and get caught up, but but it's there, and that's how you're going to find your family, how you find your people. Now, we also suggest that you visit your local historical society in the area you are researching. There are over 600 historical societies in Georgia. And this address here, this website, will give you a list of those historical societies. A lot of times they will have information that is not at somewhere like the archives because it's very local, and they'll be able to help you with that. So take a look at this, the Georgia Archives directory for historical societies. You can also contact your local library. A lot of donated items are given to the library when someone passes on. I actually found a receipt from a doctor for my great-great-grandfather. The doctor's records had been donated to the public library or to the, I think it was the public library, might have been the University of Georgia um, genealogy collection. But I was able to find that receipt that a doctor had written to my great-great-grandfather for $2. And this was a doctor, after researching the doctor, I found out that he was a doctor that really worked with formerly enslaved people. So there's a lot of information there. So check that out. Check your library out and make sure they do have a lot of materials online. They're still in the process of moving documents to online to the virtual service. But I was really excited to find that. And there were a lot of receipts in there. So if you're searching for people in your family, there's a good chance. And if they're in the Athens area, the Clark County area, then there's a good chance you can find them there. Also, you might find at the local library, authors have saved us a whole lot of work and categorized different certificates like marriage certificates. And they put it in the form of a book, they get it published. And so a lot of those books are donated to the library, to your local library. So take a look and find out about those kinds of materials and resources. Now, local bookstores may also have some historical materials. There is a listing of local bookstores. In fact, I would just Google it. That's what I do, is just Google Athens bookstores. And you can find out what they have there. You can give them a call and ask, hey, do you have a section of historical materials? Also, Georgia universities and colleges, they have collections that have been donated by families that you are able to review. A lot of them have been translated and are available online, but check them out and see. Now, when you do come to research, these are things that we suggest that you have. A portable genealogy toolkit that has the materials, as Clevlyn mentioned earlier, a portable scanner, get some state indexes, print them out and bring them with you, your camera, have your batteries, and also a portable power source. Halo has a great portable item or product that you can use. So make sure you bring all of that. Some places in Georgia, they're very rural places in Georgia, so you might not have access to a lot of the same resources that you may have in a more metro area. And so those are our suggestions that came from the Georgia SIG. So the information that we suggested. And that's it.
Okay. So let's see. So those are our journeys. And I wish we could also have said, I went on this journey and here's what I found. That would be a whole nother presentation to show all of those examples.
Right.
And again, a lot of times you wind up going more than once. Again, I think what I showed was pulled together from years of going back and forth to Noxubee and going over to all of those surrounding counties, hitting the universities. But for you, depending on it, because it's easy for me to get to Noxubee from where I live, so I can go back and forth several times. But for some of you, and especially if you're still working, maybe you just have 4 days to work. So you really have to try to make use of the time that you're going to be there. So are there any questions? Dawnya, is that somebody in your background or?
Yeah,
'Cause
I'm at a conference,
oh, okay.
and I've been trying to find a quiet spot, but I'll mic up. I'll mute.
Okay. So, and yeah, if you have any questions, someone has a question for you, then you can come back on. So are there any questions? So everybody's ready to just get on the road and go?
Clevlyn, I have a question.
Okay.
For when I look at the census records in Mississippi and you find your county, but they have beat 1, beat 2. So I imagine they're corresponding to some little city or town. So is there some place I can find, is there a listing, or how can I find what?
I found mine in the courthouse. And I wish I could pull that up now, but you saw the one that I showed you, that one showed townships. At some point they started showing beats also, but they outlined it just as you're talking about, because I was confused by that too. First they said townships, and then later they started referencing beats. So I do have a list or a category of those for my particular county. So what I can do, I know I got mine from my courthouse. I think maybe that's where you could start, for the area that because what county are you researching in Mississippi?
Coahoma County.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, start with the start there. I also think that information is at the archives, because I think they have that same book. I saw it in the archives as well for the townships and the beats. So start there. If they say they don't have it, just hit me with an email, and I'll see if I can remember exactly where I got that from. But it's like a whole booklet. And at least I know that's where I got it from for Noxubee. It may have had all the counties in there. I'm not sure. I was just focused on Noxubee.
And the archives, you said they have death certificates, 1913 to 1944?
Right. Yeah. And then once you get past 1944, then you have to go to vital records. Then you're ordering your death certificates at that point. But these, they're on microfiche, these little microfiche resources. So if you're looking at the index, which now you can find that index on Ancestry or Family Search, you can then it has the certificate number on it. And so if you think that's your person, you just have that information available. And the way they operate, which is a little annoying, but I guess they have to do this to maintain control of their information. You go to a guy at the desk and you say, I want these 5. They only give you like 5 at a time. And it has all of the death records for a particular year and county, and then mainly year and county, because they're not alphabetized. And then you have to go back to the machine and sit there and pull it up, and then you can print it. But it's the actual death certificate, and it's only 50 cents. So one of the things that I've done to save time, because just to sit there and go, is that my person? Is that my person? I just made a list of all my bankheads, all of them. And I just went every time I could pull one from that group, I just printed them. I didn't even spend a lot of time looking at it until I got back home. And then it was like a treasure find if I had some matching folks in there. But I still have some that don't match people in my tree, but at some point they may match, because especially if they came from the same county that I'm looking for. So that was just a way for me to save time. And that's just something you learn over time, is just to say, I just want all of them. I don't have time to figure out which is which.
Okay, but the archives, if I called them, they're not going to look that up for me, right?
You can try. I don't think I've ever done it that way. I think I would say try it because maybe they will. I wouldn't say no. I've just never asked over the phone. Because their procedures change over time, so they may be open to doing that. Or there's a person, oh, I can't think of her name. It was right on the tip of my tongue. Some of you guys might know her. For $5. Linda Rudd, exactly. Thank you. I was having a moment. I couldn't remember her name. Linda Rudd lives in the area, and I've used her over the years, like in between trips. When I just couldn't wait to go back to Jackson, if I saw an index, a certificate on an index, I just have her to go print it for me. And she goes to the archive. She doesn't live that far from there. And so that's $5. But that's still better than $13, $15. And once she gets it, you pay her and she emails you right away because she's going to go do it. She's not researching for you. You're telling her which certificate to get. So that's a savings, right there also. Right. But Linda Rudd, I'll have to get her information. If somebody knows that, her email address, or she has a website, if you can put that in the chat, that would be helpful.
Clevlyn,
if not, who's that?
Clevlyn, this is Judy. Hi, everyone. It's L Rudd, RUDD, at AOL.com. It's real simple. I'm driving, so I can't put it in the chat. But it's L Rudd, RUDD, at AOL.com.
Oh, okay.
She also has a website. I think if you Google her, she'll come up. And I know it, let me see, Linda Rudd. I don't know if she'll come up. Yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to pull her up.
Check your email. It should be in your email. It should come up in your email.
What is that?
L Rudd at AOL.com. If you've ordered death certificates from her before, it should come up in your email because she'll email it back to you.
Right. I have her email address. She has a website also. But what I can do, I can send that out. If somebody wants that, I can send that out later. I just don't have it available right now. But I'll send you her email address if you want to check that. But normally you could just email her if you know the certificate number. Just let her know what it is you're looking for. And the turnaround is usually fairly quick.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Doris? Hi, Doris. You're muted.
Hello, how are you?
Okay, just fine.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I have a question for William. How difficult was it to get those mental health records at South Carolina Archives?
Actually, it was easy. My sister is the one who suggested I do that because I said they won't give it to you. She said, you never know until you ask. So I went and they said, yeah, we have them. And I knew that the year to look for them based on the letter, but I'm getting into another story. But anyway, I looked for it by the guy brought out this big cart of big giant books. So I went through them, and he was in there twice. In what I showed you, and I looked for him by name. After I found that, and I was talking to somebody back here, and I told them what I found. They said, "Where'd you get the number from?" I said, "What number?" Apparently, this person thought that you have to have a case number or something in order to find the person. I said, "No, I just asked for the name, and you just flip through and you find them. I think they're in. I photographed everything. As a matter of fact, I don't use a scanner now. I use my camera to take a picture. I stand up, and because it's easier. I have a flip pal, which they don't make anymore. But anyway, yeah, to get back to your question, just ask them. They go up to a certain year. He was there in 1891, and of course, they have a rule kind of like the census does about the 72-year rule. Up to a certain point, you can't. It's private information. But way back in 1891, it was open. So I don't know how far they go. I can find out and let you know. You know, I researched that for you.
Perfect. I love that because I've been trying to get records from the hospital itself, and they have a lot of red tape. And long story short, 10 years later, I still don't have what I was looking for. And I did know they were at archives. And
Yeah.
the year that I'm looking for is 1930. Does that sound like it's doable?
It might be there because they also had people who died while they were there, and a lot of them are buried out. The part of the place used to be out right next to the archives. You've been to the South Carolina Archives, right?
Right.
Yeah. Apparently, those old buildings that was part of the hospital,
Yeah.
and they were buried. Yeah, I can find out what that sounds. It should be in that area era.
And you did
But
not have to show a relationship.
no, I said, do you have go? I think I found out about it first online, some reference to it.
Okay.
And so when I went there, I told him what I wanted, and I gave the guy's name, and I said 1891, and I'm trying to find out if he ever got out. Well, I know he did, but I mean, what happened to his wife? His wife went in with him because she had been in earlier, but that's another story. And she was back in there. And he got out, but I don't see where she did. I don't know whether they got divorced or what. But anyway, her records were in there too, and they mentioned that she was in there earlier for observation, but they let her go.
Well, I want to thank everyone because William just talked me into the next road trip to the archives. Thanks, everyone. I enjoyed it.
Oh, two things I want to talk about when you're driving. I do a lot of my thinking while I'm driving because there's nothing else to do, you know, besides your CD player or your tape player. And so I turn these things over in my mind, and also pick out. And you probably already know this, but have a place where you stop halfway to get gas or something, because you have to go 4 hours, 4.5 hours. That's a long trip. So I always stop in Augusta if you're going that way. And also, allow 30 minutes to an hour to get lost and get found again when you get there, because if you ever go anywhere and you say, I know exactly where I'm going, and they change the streets or something is wrong, I call it getting lost and getting found again. You know, just reorient yourself, and also use GPS. You know, that'll help too. But the street view is great.
So I just wanted to mention something, you guys, especially for our new members, we do have a surname research list that you'll find on the members page. And, just like you see here, you want to collaborate with your fellow members, and you want to take a look at that list because you never know who may be researching in the same area or maybe even the same surname. So it doesn't even have to be the same surname, but it could be just the area. And maybe that person can help you to navigate and not get lost as much as William suggested that you might. So it'll be good to do that homework up front. That's, for instance, like Doris, I know research is over in Union County, and I keep saying I'm going to get with Doris because I need to research in Union County. It's time to go to South Carolina to go that way. And so I'll be talking to her about how do I navigate, that road trip so that I'm not floundering. And so that's how we collaborate within the group. I think I saw, so Frank, you had a question?
Yes, I do. So my question is this chapter, the Georgia or the Atlanta Metro, is it the most appropriate chapter for someone researching family in Mississippi? Or is there or not?
Of course, we're the
Well, okay. And I asked because, my,
of course, that would be us.
okay.
No, well, I'm laughing, but we do have, because I guess we're in the South
Hmm.
and we tend to cover this region. I guess any chapter could focus on any state, but we're here in the South, and we do. I talk about Noxubee, but we have several members that research that area as well, and quite a few people who research Mississippi and Louisiana and Georgia and Alabama. You can see because we're the deep South.
Yes.
So we tend to get members who, focus on this area altogether because you're going to be researching across state. So for instance, I've researched in Alabama, and I may need to start doing some research in Georgia, even though I live in Georgia, but most of my research is Mississippi, because that's where my ancestors came from. So,
Okay. Great. That helps.
Hi, this is Johnny. I was just wondering where the gentleman was researching in Mississippi.
Yeah. So, Coahoma County. So my wife is from Coahoma County. So we're researching my wife's family, and I'm doing research on my family in Georgia.
okay. So yes, we do have quite a few people. Johnny, who just asked you that question, Johnny researches in Mississippi, and again, I've actually met other members who actually research in Noxubee. So we have quite a bit of quite a bit of representation, focus, on that area.
Okay, great. Yes, when Halima, I think is the
Halima.
name.
Yeah.
Yes, when you mentioned Coahoma County, right, that just brought a smile to my face. I was like, that's where my wife is also researching.
So
So
see, you
thanks.
guys need to communicate.
What
Hmm.
surname is she researching?
Yeah, so that's an interest. Quite a few, but the first one is Mitchell.
Okay.
But I've found in my research names. So many names. I've started with my name, but it just branches off to so many different names.
Hmm. Now, someone asked in the chat. Well, I had another one. Let me move up to the top here. So I see Adolphus is asking, is anyone researching Sapelo, Georgia? Am I pronouncing that correct? Adolphus, did you want to ask us? Is anyone in researching over in that area that we know of? You can just raise your hand. If not, we would love for you to complete the surname research list so that we can get everybody on that list. It is maintained privately. We know that at some point, people didn't want all their information out publicly, so it is a members only research list. We have Sherilyn Sheely says, do we have any members who are researching in North Carolina as well? So I have seen information. It's just like now I'm going down a rabbit hole. I know that I have people that say they research. Well, for me, my Skinners might come from there, but I just haven't had an occasion to look at North Carolina. I'm mostly deep South for my research.
Okay,
So go ahead.
this is Doris. The area of South Carolina of my research borders North Carolina. So depending on the area of North Carolina, you might want to look at those bordering counties near the South Carolina and Georgia border lines, because in what they call upcountry, it's right at the North Carolina line. So it depends on, some of my research may be in those border counties of North Carolina. Hope that helps.
Thank you. That does help a lot. And I see in the chat quite a few people. I'm from North Carolina originally. but I'm looking in Buncombe County, which is Asheville area. But a lot of my ties also go into that border that you're talking about, where Anderson, South Carolina, that Rock Hill line is right there. So I do have a lot of that, and I know this a lot of the information that that we talked about for South Carolina archives will be very helpful when I get to that point. Right now, I'm still up in Buncombe County trying to get that part of it taken care of first before I ease into the South Carolina connection.
Yeah, and that area of upcountry, we have, I'd like to talk to you further.
Okay.
Because I think that we can share a lot of information. My hometown is only 60 miles from Asheville.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah,
I'm Black Mountain.
yeah,
Yeah, we're looking in Black Mountain is where my grandmother and her family was from.
yeah. And a lot of them went into Rayburn County, Georgia. I'm just finding that out because
Okay.
it was so close. Okay.
Okay, thank
We'll
you.
talk later. Fine. Thanks.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so how do you guys want to do that? If it's somebody you want to talk to, I mean, either you can come through the chapter email, or if you want to share your email, I think you can do it personally through here. Let me see. I'll tell you, you can do it this way. Just send me, because I don't see where you can send it to an individual. If there's someone you want to connect with, send the email to the AAHGS@gmail.com and just say, put me in touch with Doris, and then I can get you guys connected in that way. Let's see. I saw something. Someone asked about, do we do road trips? Because there was a cruise at one time, and that was at the national level. They did their annual, or we had our annual conference, and that's when that cruise took place. Now, locally, there was a time, especially when I first joined, there were some folks that got together to go to the archives together. And I was still working at that time, and I understood that the archives really didn't open on the weekend. And so I wasn't making those trips as much at that time, but that's certainly something anybody can pull together a trip, because we don't have an active Mississippi special interest group. And that's where we had started talking about making that trip to the archives. But I wanted to say that anybody can pull that kind of trip together, if that's something, you're interested in. Barbara Wooten wants to know, when does the Georgia SIG meet? And is anyone researching Cohutta, Dalton, Georgia?
Clevlyn, hey, this is Dawnya. The
Mhm.
Georgia SIG group meets the first Saturday of each month, and I would be glad to add them to the notification list if
Okay, what you guys can do if you're interested in the Georgia SIG, um, shoot me an email, then I'll have your email address. And then what I do is I contact the SIG leader
right
and ask that person to add you to the list.
to
That's
the
kind of how we
list.
do that. Um, did I miss any questions? Okay. I don't see any more. If I missed any, if you want to just raise your hand, look at the little hand at the top of the screen and click that, and then because it seems like I see another hand. Frank, I see your hand still up. Are you done, or
I'm done.
okay. And I see another hand. I can't see who it is though. Did somebody else have a question?
It's Marcia.
Who is this?
It is Marcia who has the hand up.
Oh, okay. Okay. Did you have a question, or you're done? Okay. Okay. Is that it? No other questions at this time? Because what we're going to do, we're going to go into our business meeting. Okay, so it's time for our business meeting. What we want to remind everyone is that it's time to renew your membership. And we're also encouraging our visitors and guests to join us. Local membership is $20, and then national is $35. And so some of that benefit of joining our monthly meetings, access to a members only website. We have resources out there. Our special interest groups, which are only for members. You have to be a member in order to participate in the special interest groups. We have periodically we do online newsletters, but that's not something that we do on a consistent basis, but we do try to send out various virtual events. So you have opportunities to look at other workshops and seminars. And so that information is pulled together and sent out weekly. And then you have your journals and newsletters that are put out by the national organization, and there are discounts for the annual conference. And if you're interested in looking at national, you can go to their website. That's at AAHGS.org. So far, people are sending in their membership. We have 62 so far, but we are looking for many of you to rejoin us. One of the things you have to understand, the membership or the benefits, the membership fees pays for some of the speakers that we have, and we're beginning to see that more and more. There was a time when most people would come and speak for free, but that's not the case anymore. So for some of the speakers that we have, we do have to pay money to bring in people who are experienced, in this field, or experienced speakers. So that's one area. And then we might want to do a special workshop during the year that is going to, cost significantly more. And so that would be a member only benefit. So just keep that in mind. Our meeting minutes have been posted. You can take a look at those on the website. If you have any questions about the information, then you can just shoot us an email and we'll make any appropriate corrections. Same for the financial report, so you can see where the actual money goes, how much comes in, what goes out. That is posted on our website in the members only section. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, shoot us an email, and that's something that we would look into. Here are our special interest groups. We don't have a special interest group for all states, and that is because we need a leader for that group. Anyone can volunteer if that's something you want to do. And you can be as creative as you want to pull it together. Maybe you meet monthly, maybe you meet quarterly, maybe you want to do twice a year special meeting to focus on issues within that state. This might also be a time to pull together a group if you want to do a road trip together. The Jackson Archives is usually a good place for a group trip. But active right now is the Caribbean group, DNA, and Georgia. Louisiana is just by special request. That's Tammy that will collaborate with you on the Louisiana focus research. We have Tennessee military, and then Sons and Daughters of the Middle Passage, which started back in September of 2022. And so we're not at the end of it, but we are pulling documentation together to submit an application for this lineage society. So it's really been a really good experience. I'm a part of that group. Help Wanted. Remember, next weekend, February 2 through 4, we're having the History and Genealogy Day. This is a joint effort between our chapter, AAHGS, and the Georgia Archives that's presenting this 3-day event. And it's going to include history, education, and genealogy. On Saturday, that's mainly our day where we have members who will be presenting a track 1 and a track 2. A track 1 is for beginners, track 2 more advanced. But we do need volunteers because we need people to help with genealogy questions. This is for those beginners. For that track 1. At the end of the sessions, we're going to have members help the participants with their questions. So the basic genealogy, you're not doing anybody's research for them. You're just trying to help them to learn and navigate and do a little bit of research. We're going to have an information table for our chapter, and I'll be working that table. We've had a couple of volunteers. Anybody can come and help. We just need an hour or 2. This is a great opportunity for you to meet other members and to talk to the folks who might be interested in the group. And because they're gonna have questions. You have a lot of people out there that are interested in genealogy and they just don't know where to start. So we'll have information out there. You don't have to be totally informed on everything about the chapter. I just think it'll be a great opportunity. You'll find it's a lot of fun, actually. So if you're interested in any of these, we've got room monitors that we need for track 1 and 2. You're going to introduce the speakers. All that information will be made available to you on that day. And then just monitor the room, and if people have questions, just help them out with that. And hospitality, lunch will be served. We're going to have pizza and salad. So we need volunteers for that. So that period, that time range, we're looking at around 11 to 1 o'clock. So I'm going to send out another list, but if you want to get involved with any of these responsibilities, just email us at aahgsatlanta@gmail.com. But look for that volunteer list to come out again in the next couple of days. And please just go ahead and give us an hour or 2. It's not going to be a heavy lift, but we need for you guys to come on out and enjoy the presentations, which again will be February 2 through 4. And we have members presenting on all 3 days. You'll get another notice about that in tomorrow's email. And this is what it looks like. You've seen it before. I'm going to send it out again tomorrow. It has the whole itinerary in there. And if you're interested in conducting research, working on a project, we have one of our members, Rhonda Barrow, who's leading this project. We're looking for descendants of the 1916 Atlanta massacre. So they are looking for the descendants of those persons who were affected by that event. So reach out to us if you're interested in doing that. Now, for new members, and I know you guys are out there, and I don't want you to be shy. I just want you to introduce yourself and just so the whole group can get an idea of what you're focused on. Just tell us your name, your research focus, which would include your county and state, and then your surname. And this would be for anyone. I know we have some new members for 2023, but we had some members in 2022 who never, okay. And I was just corrected. It's the 1906 race massacre. I said 1916, but it was 1906, so I've been corrected. So do we have any persons who would like to introduce themselves? Anybody? Peggy?
Well, okay, yes. I'm Peggy Clark, and I'm a member of AAHGS New York, as I live in Brooklyn, New York. But my research is in Georgia, primarily Clark County. I wrote it down so I wouldn't mess up. Elbert County and Madison County. And the names are Strickland, Bell, and Clark.
Okay.
Primarily.
Was that
Yeah.
you and I that communicated about Elbert, Georgia?
No, I
You're
haven't
just
communicated.
okay. But you're new, aren't you? You just
Yes, I'm
started
new.
with
I'm
the
new.
group. Okay.
And I can relate to Danya's presentation, because she right off the bat said that some of her people went to Chattanooga, and I was born in Athens, and many of my cousins now are still in Athens. I have cousins in Atlanta, and primarily cousins now, because the older ones are going on. But the area I would love to. I will send an email to be part of that special interest group of Georgia.
Okay, because it's focused on Georgia.
Right.
And so Georgia, I haven't, as long as I've been living here, I haven't really researched Georgia. But now Elbert County is an area that I need to go to next. And now that's two people that I've heard of. But I'll talk to you about that another time. I haven't gone there yet, but sorry, I got muted. So I mentioned just real quick. Now I need to look at Elbert County, and now that so far there are two people. So I put it out in the universe, and now it's coming back to me. So I'll be taking a look at that county. Jeanette.
Yes.
Jeanette. Okay.
On Elbert County, just FYI, I believe it's supposed to have the largest 90% of all of the granite and materials that are used for headstones are supposed to come in the world. I read somewhere from Elbert County, and I believe the county is largely African American. So when you guys go up there, I think a lot of us want to put a lot of headstones around for ancestors. See if y'all can work out a deal or something. Also, just FYI, as the military SIG, tomorrow, 1 p.m., we are starting a new series, and I'm hoping that we have a lot of participation. Tomorrow, what we're going to do is just help you identify which one of your ancestors, determining when they would have been born, which wars they might have participated in. And next month, we're going to start to look at some of the resources on how you can look up them in the individual wars. Just FYI. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jeanette. So that's
in.
our military SIG. So if you're interested in a military SIG, shoot us an email and I'll get that information to you. And Jeanette, if you want to do a basic info email, I can send that out to the membership as well. That might even be easier since your meeting is coming up tomorrow. It might be quicker for me to just do that. So if you shoot me an email, then I'll send that out to everybody.
Okay. It's on.
Okay. So it looks like Albert is gonna be coming up. Who else we got? Johnny? Oh, that's Jeanette. Okay. Cardella.
Yes, I'm Cardella Cummings. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and my research is in Lexington, Georgia, and Gaston, Alabama.
Okay. Glad to have you. Cardella is a new member. Who else do we have? I can't see everybody.
Karen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yes, my name is Karen Stewart, and I am a native Texan. I am doing research, obviously in Georgia, and you have to pardon me, I'm driving right now. But my family founded a settlement on what is now Berry College, and our cemetery is still there. So a lot of my research is focused on Floyd County. Um, Surnames are Shelton, Kathy, uh, and then there's also some research that I'm doing in Clark County for Spurlock, and in a place called Cutoff, or used to be called Cutoff, Walton County, Georgia, for the surnames Hill and Rucker. And also doing a lot of research in Chattooga County, Finley, Adams. It's a lot of names, but yeah,
Mhm.
that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Make sure you check out our surname research list on the members page. Was there anyone else? I still see a hand, but I can't see whose hand it is. You can just.
Clevlyn, I
Hi.
think
Hi.
well,
Can you hear me? Oh, someone else talking?
Okay, go ahead. Who is that?
Okay. This is Vicky. I spoke to you. First of all, thanks. It was an awesome presentation today. I appreciate it so much.
Thank
And
you.
I am Vicky Brown. I'm out in California. And surprise, surprise, all my family is from Elbert County,
Uh-oh,
Georgia.
looks like we got a road trip going to Albert.
I can't wait. I found quite a number of people online. Finally, after 3 years, I kind of came into this backwards, but I'm happy to have found a home. I started with a DNA test, doing it with an aunt. And lo and behold, I'm like, who are all these people? And so it's been a blessing to be able to see faces that look like me, I never knew existed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now I've got the bug. Everyone says, you got the bug. So I've got this bug. And my another cousin, we haven't figured out how we're related. She's out of Charlotte, AAHGS chapter, and her mother encouraged me to join. And so I just signed up for all three at the same time: Atlanta, the Metro, National, and Charlotte, because I'm so excited. They're like, oh, you got it bad, girl. So
that really is a commitment. So welcome, and we will be talking Elbert County soon, because I need to focus on that area too. So
okay, some of my surnames are Maddox, Harper, Tate, and Carter. That was pretty much the beginning of it. And I'm learning that Harper's could have been Blackwell's, a lot of matches there, a lot of interesting names showing up on a side I didn't know we really had there. Dye is a big one, DYE. That's a big mystery. So that's it. Hope to be networking with some of you guys.
Okay, we're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
I see Samora says, I've gone to the Family History Center with the California AAHGS group. Is anybody interested in that? What time frame are you looking at? Are you looking at the, what is that's coming up? I know they have Roots Tech. Is that what you're looking at, Roots Tech?
Yeah, because Roots Tech usually happens in February. I was just wondering if like anybody in this group, like we could go as a group. Like I'm new, so hi, I'm Samara. People call me Cece. I kind of came in backwards too, maybe wanting to research things that I've heard in my family after a DNA test, and I've just been bit by a bug, and I have a sweater I actually had made that says I've been bit by the genealogy bug. So I don't necessarily have a specific region, because a lot of the people I meet via DNA wise. And so it takes me to different places. My goal is to trace back my family to Africa. I've only been able to trace one line back to Africa. Well, not back to Africa, back to a plantation where the the census record actually says that the person was born in Africa. So I just enjoy the researching it all for me, and I help others too. So that's why me and Cardella are family, because we met through the DNA part.
Oh, okay.
So,
well,
so
that'll be
it's so
interesting. So at some point when we share, we'd love to hear that story, because sometimes we'll do a meeting where we get members to share a find or a certain story about their family history that may be of interest to the rest of the group. And usually you're just looking at maybe 10 minutes, but that sounds interesting. But I'll be in touch, and we can talk some more about that. Vicky asked, was the question about California? No, the question was about going to the Family History Center in Utah, right?
yes, it's in Utah.
Okay, yeah. So she was saying that she's going with the group in California, but they're going to Family History Center in Utah.
Right. So I've been with, like, you can go all year long, because I think it's only closed, I think, Christmas Day. So like when we went, I went with them in, I think, 2019. It was for like a week, and we went in March. But it was just a group of us, people from all over, and everybody was just kind of looking for stuff. And it's interesting because I like a lot of the towns and things that exist today didn't exist back then, and so they have like very specific postmaster books and stuff like that for towns that you may find in a wheel or something like that that you don't know where it is and you can't Google it. So I mean, you find a lot of information, a lot of wheels and things like that, and even where you have, I heard somebody was saying it wasn't Route One, or where it's kind of equivalent to a militia code. Like they have the books from way back then. Like I found from like the 1600s from a place called Bull Swamp, South Carolina, which is right outside of Orangeburg, where my family members was slaves at, and it was a slave plantation. So I only put that connection together from books that they have there.
Right. Okay. Okay, well, listen, I want everyone, we need to wrap up. We normally start on time, we end on time. We're a little bit over, but that's okay. I think it's okay to go over a little bit sometimes. I am so happy that a lot of our members introduced themselves and told us where you're from. And what I'd like for all of you to do, if there's someone you want to reach out to, because I'm not seeing that feature here, like in Zoom, you can talk to someone directly without your information going throughout the group. But if there was somebody that you want to be in touch with, go ahead and shoot me an email, and then I'll get it over to that person, and then you guys can communicate from there. I think I got all our questions. Let me see, as far as announcements, the main thing was that the Georgia Archives Day, which is coming up next February, I'm sorry, February, the first weekend of February, that event will take the place of our normal February meeting, which is normally on the fourth Saturday of the month. So don't look for another meeting in February other than this 3-day event. It will be in person, but and I know especially for the purposes of those of you who are out of town, we're going to replay that track 2, the advanced. The other one is beginner. That's track 1. But track 2, I think we're going to record it, or it just may be represented at a later date. So you will get a chance to take advantage of that. And the floor is open. Do we have any quick announcements or information you want to share?
Yes, I would just like to do a quick introduction. I'm Frank Plummer. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, but originally from Georgia. So my focus is in Georgia, my research, specifically in Albany, Dougherty County, as well as Dooley County. And the family names that I'm focusing on are Plummer in Albany and Swearinger and Peavy in Dooley County.
Okay.
As well as my wife will do, she's researching in Mississippi in Clarksdale and there in Coahoma County. So for certain, Clevlyn, I will reach out to you to put me in touch with Halima, I think is her
Halima?
name. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yep. And great presentation by everyone that presented today. Very good and very informative. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And if any of you, all of you have ideas for topics, let us know because we have a lot of experienced researchers within the group. I like to get down to showing what we've actually done. I think that can be more helpful so that people get a little bit more of a visual of the kind of things or research that we're doing and what we're finding. Because there's some of us have been researching for a lot of years, some more than me. So we have a lot of sharing that can be done just within our organization. Um, so let me see. Someone says, were you able to find the sale record for this family member? So I wasn't sure who that was directed to. Oh, okay. That's Samora. So Samora, if you can shoot me an email and then we can get that over to oh, I see they're talking to each other. Sorry. They worked it out over here. I don't need to do that. Okay, the floor is open. Any other comments or questions before we and again, if you want to volunteer, send that email to me because I probably won't remember it from this chat. Send me an email on the area where you want to volunteer. I will send out another list of where we need help. You can respond to that as well.
Excuse me,
Okay.
Clevlyn, this is William. Looks like Vicky Brown has her hand up.
Oh, Vicki, are you still up or?
No, my hand is down. I'm sorry.
Okay, okay. I know that hand was floating there and I kept saying, I
I'm
think I'm
so
missing
sorry.
somebody, but that's okay. Okay, so I think that's it. I want all of you to have a great rest of the weekend and thanks for coming out. Okay, so goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.